I was at the studios when INXS started recording the X album, and I spent 5 weeks at the studios while they recorded X over my school holidays in early 1990. And then I was having so much fun at the studio that I left school and I spent 5 months with INXS while they were recording the album. Kind of like the kid in Almost Famous, where I was just this dorky kid that was looking for something else in life other than normality. And INXS was that for me, and Michael was the standout. He was just so charismatic and so kind and generous and always looked after me. So I ended up spending 5 months with the guys. So I got to know them really, really well, like really well. I'd go into the studios, I'd be hanging out, I'd watch them record, I'd go to all the listening parties. So of course when the world tour started and INXS finally came back the year after in 91 to do those 5 shows at the Entertainment Centre, I had tickets for all 5 shows. In fact, I think I only bought 1 ticket for the first show and the others were given to me by the INXS guys. They gave me, and I had backstage passes and Michael and Gary were looking after me and John, and they were all just whatever I wanted I could have. It was amazing. So the first concert was cool because I was pretty close down the front. I was like 3rd row, I think, for the first concert. Because INXS knew me, I'm thinking, they've just got to see me, and I was in the crowd and they came on and I got to finally see them and the production was amazing and like they were just the best live band you could ever see. Because they'd played for so many years and all the thousands of pubs and clubs, and they really worked their asses off. So when it, and they'd done the Kick tour before that, global, 80,000 people at their shows. So they knew, the Entertainment Centre was 12 or 13,000 people. They knew how to put a show on and it was just amazing. And I remember looking, and then Michael for a moment looked into the audience and he saw me and he smiled and I was like, yes, Michael saw me. And then at the end of the concert, I remember Tim and Kirk talking and they looked at me and they both took the guitar picks out and they were flicking them over in my direction until I caught one each. So they were kind of going everywhere, but they made sure that I got them. So I was like, that's so cool. So for me, like seeing them for the first time was just like an absolute dream come true. And then after that, I went backstage and Rat Cat was supporting that night. I think for the whole tour. I remember playing table tennis with Simon Day, who was the singer from Rat Cat, while INXS were walking around, and just there was all these people, and I've never been backstage really before, certainly on that level. Okay, so I saw INXS play 27 times live in concert. I was at the Arias in 96 when they did the song Searching. So I saw them play live there for that one song. In fact, the Arias 96 was the last time INXS ever performed to an Australian audience with Michael. And I'm so blessed that I was there for that song Searching. And if you watch that on YouTube, it's a really emotional performance from all of INXS, but very much Michael. But then I also saw them many other times, you might say, perform live because I was at rehearsals. So I'd be hanging out at rehearsals. So I would see them rehearse many, many times. So live 27, once at the Arias, for the one song, and 10 or 15 or 20 other times rehearsals. So there was this obscure thing they did in 93, I think it was called Get Out of the House Tour, where they did pub shows. So they were hugely famous, in the 80s and early 90s, doing global arenas. They did the Rock in Rio to about 100,000 people at one stage. Of course, they did Wembley Stadium. Massive stadiums all around the world, sold out. And then they were like, we want to get back to our roots, so we want to do some pub shows. So I think they did 5 or 6 pub shows in Sydney in 93. And at that stage, you could only buy 1 ticket for 1 show, and they were sold through obscure little record shops. They were so hard to get. And I can't remember exactly how I did it, but I contacted Kirk Pengilly and I said, look, I've got tickets for one of the shows, but I couldn't get tickets for the other 4 pub shows. And he said, oh, it's fine, leave it with me. So he put my name on the door for the other 4 pub shows. So I didn't miss out on any of the shows that they did for those small little club shows. And so it was cool because I got to see, the first experience was to see 5 huge shows in the Entertainment Centre with 12 or 13,000 people. And then 2 years later, I saw them in pub and club shows with, you know, a couple of hundred people. So 2 nights before the concert for Live, they played a warm-up gig at the Paddington RSL, and it was invite only, and there was probably only 100 people that night, and I was right up the front, right in the middle, and I had like 5 rolls of film. There was film in those days, and then I took about 150 photos of that show that night, which were quite intimate photos because I was, you know, I was this far away from Michael. A lot of those photos are in my Michael in Pictures book. I've got this beautiful photo of Michael from that night, and his eyes are closed, and it's just a moment that I captured. And on the base of his microphone, it's got numbers and letters because, you know, it's a microphone. It's the serial number, you might say. I started analysing the photos, and I zoomed into that one particular photo that I'd taken of him at the Paddington RSL, and the base of the microphone, it said MH37. Well, Michael Hutchence died at the age of 37, and the photo that I took of is him with his eyes closed, just with the microphone on his face. And just, each and every gig was unique, but it was amazing. So much energy. I saw them in Canberra. The last big concert they did was in Canberra in '94, and I drove down to Canberra. I actually stayed in the same hotel as them, the Park Hyatt down there. There was a few funny nights at the hotel with them, which I won't talk about. But yeah, the last night down in Canberra, Michael jumped off stage, and he ran around the theatre, and he ran through the crowd, and they had a security guard with him, but Michael just, I think it was spontaneous. I don't think the security guard realised what he was going to do. He jumped off the stage and he ran up right up the back of where they were performing, and like 50 girls just jumped on him. And I could always see this security guard trying to pull Michael out. Michael was laughing, and like he thought it was the funniest thing ever. So he had a lot of fun. But yeah, that was actually the last time INXS played a gig in Australia. It was in Canberra in 1994. Because I knew them really well over those 5 months at the studios while they were doing X. Really well. Like John Farris used to drive me home in his Porsche. Michael would take me on the Harley Davidson. I knew them really well. Like the listening parties, the listening party for X, there was only like 20 people there. It was very intimate. And Michael sat next to me on the black lounge, and he pulled a microphone up, and he put his arm around me, and he sang Bitter Tears in the microphone while it was going over the loudspeakers in the studio. There was never a bad time with Michael. There was never a moment where I thought, oh dear, that wasn't nice. It was always good. It was always nice. He always looked after me. He always protected me. But I have met many fans of INXS over the years. And when my book came out, I had a lot of people, and they still do, write to me. They want to tell me their stories about INXS and Michael. And, you know, people say, I met Michael here once and this and that. And everyone has a unique story where Michael spent time with them. There was a girl that wrote him a letter that was a teenager, and she had acne, and she was wanting to go into the music industry. And she wrote Michael a letter just to the record company, and it got to Michael. This was about 1986, around the Listen Like Thieves kind of era of their fame. He was a rock star, and he wrote her a 4-page letter about life and the music industry. And he said, I grew up my whole life with acne. This time in your life will pass. Hang in there, you know. And he wrote this beautiful letter. Didn't know her, just a fan that wrote him a letter saying, hey, I love INXS. I'm an awkward teenager going through puberty. I've got acne, but I want to be a singer like you. You've inspired me. And he took the time and he wrote and she sent me the letter, took photos and sent me the letter. And it's this beautiful, beautiful letter he wrote. But there's so many people that have all these stories that they tell me about. And I've never heard a bad story about him. Never, ever. I was with a friend of mine at 1 o'clock in the morning, and Eddie Vedder, we could see his balcony. We looked up, and he was on the balcony drinking. He was by himself. And we're like, oh, hey, Eddie, we yelled out. And he was a bit drunk. And he was like, oh, hey, guys, what are you doing? We're like, we're fans, Eddie. Come down, have a drink with us, you know. And he was drinking up there. And he was like, he went back in the balcony. We thought, oh, at least we said hello to him. That was kind of cool. About 5 minutes later, and he comes to the hotel. We're sitting on a bench across the road from the hotel. He just sits next to us. So it's me, my mate, Nick, and Eddie Vedder. We're talking for like 30, 40 minutes about music, about writing, about touring, just sitting with it. The nicest guy. brought down like a beer each for us. We were just like hanging out on the park bench, but no photo. I still couldn't get it. He's like, guys, let's just talk. I don't want to do a photo. And at some point you realize, you know what, the photo doesn't mean as much as what this 30 minutes means. In early 1990, when they were doing their X album, I heard Michael's Harley come into the car park, and I thought, I'll go down and catch the lift up. So I caught the lift down to the car park, and I didn't know this, but Midnight Oil were putting literally the final touches to the Blue Sky Mine. I think they just had to do that one song just to edit or remix or something. And I went down the car park, and there's Peter Garrett with Michael Hutchence. I've never seen a photo of Michael and Peter Garrett together. And I look back on it now, I think, oh, God, I wish I took that photo. But sometimes the moment means more than snapping a photo. I gave Peter my Michael Hutchence book as a gift. I went to his book launch at a library, and I gave him the gift of the book. And about a month later, he sent me a text. And I read, I'm like, you don't know the number. I'm like, who's this from? And he's like raving on how much he loves the book and what a great job I did, and stories are amazing. And it says, love, Peter Garrett. And I'm like, oh, wow, Peter Garrett texts me? So I text him back, like, thanks so much, blah, blah. And he's like, stay in touch. I just remember Doc being really, really tall, and he had a really gentle presence about him, as I could say. And he always signed Doc Neeson E equals MC squared. That was his autograph, which was really unique. And he was always kind. I met him a couple of times over the years at different events, music events or charity auctions or gigs and stuff. It's always the same guy, always nice and calm and polite. He was like that, sort of almost like an English gentleman, sort of suaveness about him. But then when he went on stage, he was a full rock and roll star. He just really, he gave it all. But yeah, he was just a really lovely person to meet. I have an interesting story about the Divinals. I saw them in 1991 up at King's Cross. So I touched myself, and all that had come out, and they were big. But it was weird. They were really big, but they were playing pub shows. There must have been 100 or 200 people in this little club. So I was up the front of the gig, right in the middle up the front, and I had my little camera again, and I just loved taking photos at gigs. I loved it. And after about 40 minutes in, and I'd probably taken 2 rolls of photos, and I was loving the gig as well. Chrissy Amphlett came up, and she just took the camera off me, and she took it up the back, and she put it up the back right near the drum kit. And she just leaned over and she said, just enjoy the show. And I just remember the whole time thinking, oh God, my camera's up the back. Am I going to get it back when the gig's finished? Because I can't just run up on stage. And I remember when it finished, I was like, can someone get my camera? Like one of the roadies. It's just at the back there. So that was kind of cool. She was just like, just take it in. In 2005, her book came out. She wrote an autobiography. And I happened to become good friends with Vince Lovegrove, who was in a band, the Valentines with Bon Scott in the early days before AC/DC. Vince managed the Divinals as well. Vince had an incredible life. He did Susie's story about his wife that contracted AIDS, and then his little boy Troy sadly got AIDS and passed away. He had a tough life, Vince, but really lived it. Anyway, him and I became very close. So he took me along to the book launch with him. It was at the Metro in the city. And I got to hang out with Vince and Chrissy Amphlett. Met AC/DC many times over the years. I first met them in 1991 when they were touring Australia. I just remember Angus running around, just like doesn't stop, like Mick Jagger just doesn't stop, and Peter Garrett. These guys don't stop on stage, but it was amazing. But those guys are the nicest guys. There would have been about 100 to 200 people lined up outside the hotel, all the way down the street and around the corner of the Four Seasons Hotel. And he said Angus was like an hour. He said it was crazy to watch. He went around the block and signed for every single body that wanted his autograph. I love Boom Crash Opera. I think they're so underrated. I've seen them in the pubs over the years. Every time well, not every time, but over the years, if I see them playing at a club or a pub, I'll make the effort to go see them because live, I think they're just so much energy. I think Dale Ryder's voice is amazing too. Ivor Davies is a bit of a perfectionist, humble, lovely, awesome. Like, I've met him a couple of times, so nice. I actually met him in a grocery store once up in the Northern Beaches shopping. Shit, Ivor Davies. So I wait for him to do his shopping and I slowly walk outside to sort of time it so I could get into a conversation outside the store. And I'm like, oh, hi, Ivor. And he's like, hey, how you going? What's your name? I'm like, oh, that's nice. I'm Richard. And we start talking. And I'm like, I met you in 1990 at Selena's and I asked for a guitar pick and you wouldn't give me one because they cost you $50. And he's like, yeah, that's right. They used to... And he's like, yeah, that's true. He goes, yeah, you did meet me because I used to get guitar picks made in those days and they were $50 each. When the Rolling Stones came out to Australia in 2003, he contacted, I think it was Paul Dainty, and he said, look, I've got this portrait of Keith Richards I want signed. My friend Graham comes to Sydney and he said he stayed at my house and he said, come along with me. Obviously, Dainty had organised it with Keith Richards. There's an artist turning up with a portrait to get signed. So we walked through, I remember these long corridors out at Homebush, and there was this huge curtain, massive, it must have been 20 foot high, black, huge curtain. And then to the left was Ronnie Woods playing pool with some other musicians. Somewhere else over there on the right was Charlie Watts talking to Alan Border, the Australian former cricket captain. And then right in the middle of the room was Keith on a stool, and he had a white guitar, which he was playing, and he had a cigarette. And my friend Graham was like, oh, let's go get it signed. I said, no, wait. Take this moment in. We are never going to have this moment ever again. So we just stood there, and there was Keith just in the middle of the room, didn't see us at first. He was playing his guitar, it was plugged into a little amp, and he was just like rehearsing what he had to do. So he was playing Rolling Stones songs. And I always remember the cigarette smoke just going up slowly up into, fading up into the sky up there, up into the ceiling. And after a moment or two, Keith looked up and maybe he took the, oh guys, yeah, come over. And there was this black lounge. We sat on this lounge and he's like, wow. And the portrait was really cool that was on this car bootleg. And he's, Ronnie, look at this. Charlie, look at this. And I'm thinking, where's Mick? And then I found out that Mick has his own dressing room. He didn't associate with the other Rolling Stone guys. This is crazy. I'm backstage with the Rolling Stones because my friend got a car bootleg painted with Keith Richards' portrait on it. Someone comes down, gives us 2 tickets to sit with the family of the Rolling Stones. So we're with Keith's wife and kid and Mick's partner at the time, and there was like 30 of them on the side of the stage, and we're sitting there with all the family 5 feet from the stage watching the Rolling Stones. Hi, I'm Richard Simpkin, and you can find my story at the Australian Rock and Roll Museum.